Hi, welcome to Trebons. So we're with Kumra here to the left, and we've got Jam over here to the right. They both had their litters. They're very, very close birth pair of them, so very close in age. We're talking hours rather than days or months or weeks or anything like that. And what's interesting for me, I should really start that again. So. For both females we use the same male, a male in Serbia, Tom Jones. They got mated roughly at the same time, and they had their puppies roughly at the same time. What's also interesting for me as a kennel is Kumra here, the father of Kumra was U2, the father of Jam was U2. And if we look further back in their pedigrees, they're also related. So basically we've got a very, very close genetic going on here. And the reason I'm saying that is because when we look at the litters, we've got two different sizes. We've got 7, we've got 4 puppies here. And when we look at the sizes of the litters, and when it comes to puppy handling, and there's many different methods out there on the internet now. We've got the biosensory program, the Superdog program, which is virtually the same, but there's a lot out there. And most of them concentrate on working with your puppies in the first couple of weeks. I think with the biosensor program it's for the first 3 weeks, 16 days or something. But there has to be a plan to it. And do you handle a puppy, a small litter, the same way as you handle a big litter? The one thing I've learned over the years is all the handling that goes out there in young puppies, it's about one thing and one thing only. It's about stimulation, and that stimulation is about competition. It's competition to get to the mother's tit to feed. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. But there has to be a plan to it. Why do we want to stimulate the puppies? The more we stimulate the puppies, the more excitable the puppy gets as he gets older. So there has to be a balance. So what we try and do, we want the stimulation, but we also need to be able to control that balance. So our program goes a lot further than just for a couple of weeks. It's a continuation, and we measure that. The first measurement will be when we cut the nose of the puppies, around between 10 and 12 days, depending on their development. So handling, we start. And just to show you something here, so you've got this puppy here, and they're pretty widespread, the Kumo litter. There's very little competition, because there's only plenty of milk, and there's very, very little competition when it comes to the handling. Very calm. As you can see, yeah, here we go. Hang on, this little fella here. That's the same, so just hand. And up. Very calm. Is that a good sign or a bad sign? Go to Jam's litter here. So, same thing. Stroke of the belly. And pick it up. We've got the stress going on. Far more so than here, take a little bit. So why is that? Why do we have these puppies far more vocal? Let's struggle a bit. Here we go, pick him up. And that's because in this litter it's far more competitive. They're born, they're aware they've got litter mates. As soon as you touch them, they go straight for the tit again. That's what they do. Here we go, demonstrate again. Wait, here you come in. Head. So you pick him up. Nice and gentle. But they're far more competitive. He's wanting to get away here, looking around, put him down, and we're going straight for the tit. They're far more competitive, and they're born that way. A big litter is born that way, it's born more competitive. And that's what handling does. All we're doing is stimulating that competition. What we need to do is there's a good level of competition in this litter, and I'll go back to the Kumo litter, and you can see they're more spread, they're in the land of plenty. There's less competition in this litter. The handling, as I say, here we go. And pick it up. There's a calmness, a far more acceptance to two things. That's because there's no need for them to compete to get to the tip. So at birth, they knew they're competitive. And the reason I'm saying this is because the genetics is virtually identical in the two dogs. What you're seeing is a different response in two different litters, so therefore the handling has to be different. These guys are fairly competitive to get to the tip. If I increase that competitiveness with firmer handling, what happens is I will get puppies pushing each other puppies out, the mother gets stressed, there's a good level of competition here. Yeah? So it's just a case of getting used to the hand being touched. That's all like we're doing with this litter. But I don't want to put too much pressure on them because that's going to create more pressure to get to the mother's tip, and that creates bigger competition. Then we get more stressed puppies, it's harder to control. This litter, on the other hand, is pretty widespread. There's no competition to get to the tip. They need firmer handling. And so that's where the handling is not, we'll be putting on bigger stresses on the puppies to make them more competitive. The reason I've got the bigger box for Kumara and the smaller box for Jam is because later on, as puppies get older, you will see when they're feeding, especially when they get onto the solids, is that they will start to be in different places in the room, etc. These guys are already there. They're already learning a lesson here. They're going to be slightly more independent. So we utilise the box. That's why she's got the big box. We're spread out and everything's good. They want warmth. They've got plenty of warmth. They can get to the mother. But they're far more, there's less need. These guys, they need to be closer and everything else, so therefore they're in the smaller box. So the big test, and all the way through what we do is see whether the handling's working or not, what we're doing. So the big test is at 10-12 days, as I say. The first test for them is with the nail cutting. At the moment, we don't want to put too much stress on these puppies. They're competitive enough, we don't want them over competitive. Hello, Tickle. Yeah, there we go. And what we want to do is get the puppies used to calming down. I don't, stress level in a dog, we call that, is in reality drive. That's what it's called, and it manifests itself in two ways. You can go excited, then overexcited, or you can go timid, wary of something, to being scared. And it's the same thing, it's the same line, it's just opposite ends. And in worst case scenario, a dog that's overexcited, you can't communicate with. A dog that's scared and really fearful, you can't communicate with. Those are the two extremes of it. What we want to do is get a balance, so that we want to stress the puppies to a certain extent that the puppy calms down and rebalance itself. And that's what we're aiming at. So therefore, when we're using the puppy programs and we see the puppy programs, it does depend on the size of your litter. It depends on what you want out of your dog as well, what you're aiming for. What we're aiming for is a nice balanced litter. But we do need to be firmer with the Kumara litter when it comes to handling, and then with this litter, because of the size difference. And it just shows that they're aware of their litter mates. So that's our first video, and we'll be carrying it on.